We have Muktasree Chakma, an indigenous rights activist and researcher. She is Bangladesh's first indigenous woman to win the UNICEF MENA Media Award. She's a founder of SPaRC, an indigenous women-led organization, and a core group member of Sangat, a feminist network. That you're a researcher, a feminist activist with a background in law. So, how do you view the representation of indigenous populations and women in particular in mainstream cinema and television in Bangladesh?
First of all, Juju, before I come to your answer, Juju is the way that my community's people greet each other. And
Mm,
absolutely honored to be in this panel today. So, back to your question, Ekta, none. If you ask about the
mm,
mainstream cinema and
mm,
media, then you will see almost none. Zero is the representation of the indigenous population. Um,
mm,
there are some, especially in the cinema, there are some representation recently started in the drama web series or in the form of short drama, short documentary, that sort of way, but that is also very very minimum. I think one of the reasons behind is that the indigenous people who is representing the indigenous people and also who is telling the story of indigenous people. And I'm
mm,
asking this question because it is important. We saw that in mainstream cinema there were some indigenous actors, but they were
mm,
never portrayed as an indigenous person from Bangladesh. They were portrayed
mm,
as someone from some Asian country, like Chinese, Japanese, and they come with the kung fu and karate, that sort of thing. So
mm,
so who is writing the story, who is telling the story, and also who is representing it, it's that's a big big question. uh, and another thing is that if the indigenous people are not writing their own story, then
mm,
or a friend of indigenous population who is aware of the oppression and the discrimination that has been going on against the indigenous population, if they don't know about that, then the story will be not correctly represent the indigenous context and culture and everything. And on that point, we don't have much filmmaker, we don't have much director, we actually have none. Like when I'm thinking, I can only think about one indigenous filmmaker, and I will come to that point later. But and why we don't have it? Because directing a cinema, being an artist, and making art, and just be in the cultural society sort of seems to us as a luxury. Maybe we don't have the luxury to enjoy and share our knowledge in the form of cinema, in the form
mm,
of dramas and stuff. And about the indigenous filmmaker that I'm talking about, he is Ong Rakha, and his first film was published in 2015. It's called My Thangari. My Thangari, in English, it calls My Cycle, and it won several awards all over the world: Estonia, Sweden, Tanzania, Rome, Finland, Spain, several. But in Bangladesh, it's banned.
mm,
The reason to be banned in Bangladesh because the Bangladesh censor board showed that the language of the cinema of this cinema is Chakma. Yeah, that's
mm,
why they are banning. That's the reason they are showing in the paper. But we also have information because this cinema, there was a like 3 or 4 seconds of clip where the cinema shows that some military, supposedly military person are going,
mm,
on through a frontier, and they just
mm,
show the boots, not even the whole uniform and something. And that's the reason for that 3 4 seconds of clip that cinema is banned in Bangladesh. You can't
mm,
show it, you can't release it commercially. And also
mm,
the reason that censor board say that because it's not in Bengali language, that's why we are not we are blocking this cinema to be commercially released. I mean, come on, we are a nation that take pride
mm,
of being, bloodshedding for language. Yeah,
mm,
we are the nation who established the International Mother Language Day, and now we become the perpetrator. So the
mm,
hypocrisy, the level of hypocrisy is also very important. Thank you,
mm.
Ekta.
And that's also similar to what I think people in, the native populations of the US would say, because they were the original people who, populated the land, and then they were shown as the bad guys in the movies. So I'm going to take it now to the digital medium. And Muktashi, you have been using social media and your TikTok as a space to call out patriarchy, using satirical videos. So tell us, why have you chosen this medium, and what have been your observations and learnings, and with this kind of a process that you're creating these interesting videos?
I think, first of all, um, as a like I used to be a journalist, so I used to work with the media very closely. And then there was a regret and frustration inside of me that how the indigenous stories are not getting properly represented, or not, telling the story that uh, they want to put emphasis on. So that was obviously one thing. And the
Yeah.
other thing, I think it was because, see, even when I come to the indigenous population point,
Mm,
representation of that in the South Asian film and industry, it's low,
mm,
almost low. And then on top of it, indigenous females are like minus something, yeah. So they are not even being represented. And I saw that there is a, especially during the COVID, there was a uh, huge rush of indigenous men, women, both. They were making contents, and those were like on the simple topic: what are we eating? How we dress. And today I have to do a prayer to Mother Earth. Very simple topic about daily life. So that was a very that was a very good experience of me. But then I also saw that the indigenous men
mm,
are harassing the indigenous female for making contents. Yeah, I
mm,
mean, the indigenous women were facing the harassment, bullying, cyber harassment from the majority portion, from the Bengali community.
mm,
On top of that, they were also facing the problem from their own community men.
mm,
And these indigenous women, they were just talking about normal issues, and they were
mm,
being harassed for what they are wearing.
mm,
They were being
mm,
harassed for why they are talking about indigenous food. But the same content created by the indigenous man, he wasn't being bullied for this thing. And by the way, just to set the context, indigenous man rarely, very, very rarely, maybe like 0.001% wear
mm.
their traditional clothes when they're making content.
Okay.
But the indigenous females are always wearing something traditional. Even today, I wear a traditional clothes with me. Yeah, and
Mm,
that sort of, I don't know whether I'm allowed to say this. That sort of pissed me off. Like,
mm,
what's happening here?
mm,
And also, because of the privilege that I have in indigenous community, I come from a relatively good family, well-known family from the indigenous community. I'm already
mm,
married. I don't have
mm.
to, worried about who will marry the bad indigenous girl. I have a son. So all these privileges that I have, I was thinking, because many indigenous women were also reaching out to me saying that, Shathidi, this is happening, how I can file a case, what I can do. And if you look into the culture of impunity and the justice system in Bangladesh, obviously for my law background, I knew that nothing will happen. Yeah. So
Mm,
how we get back to that? So I
mm,
used my privilege, and I started making content on various issues like indigenous male. When there is they are not wearing clothes, then they are like this, but then indigenous female, so those
Mm.
sort of things. And it's actually I don't think my contents are very popular. It's basically not in the TikTok platform, that's for
Mm.
sure. So
Mm.
I
Mm.
regenerated them in the Facebook, because in Facebook I have certain audience whom I connected with, whom I talk with
Mm.
regularly. So I regenerate
Mm.
them in Facebook. That is one sort of content. The other content was to make the mainstream community people to be aware about the indigenous people.
Mm.
So they
Mm.
also say lots of discriminatory, very disrespectful thing to us, like upojati, subnation, yeah, and
Mm.
oshobho, like uncivilized, where we don't know how to behave, and there is always fantasies going on in objectifying the indigenous women. So some
Yeah.
of my content were also about that. And I
Mm.
completely relate when Shaloni was talking about that, that in Australia, if the Indian women, they have to play the Indian role. Yeah, there is nothing other role they can play.
Mm.
In Bangladesh, it's the same. Like the limited number of actors that are coming now, they can only
Yeah.
play the indigenous role.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
though in Bengali feature there are so many diversified. Like I
Yeah.
have Bengali feature, yeah,
Yeah.
but because I have the Chakma title, I will be immediately put into the indigenous box, and that I
Right.
really don't like about. Even in the webinar and stuff, it's always like putting you in the box because of the title you have,
Mm.
because of the context
Mm.
that you are coming up, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. You're right. People are put in a certain box based on their name and where they come from, and unfortunately, that's also another trend that'll be across all our countries. Not just in Bangladesh.